eat while I'm doing this. All right, so I'm going to multitask a little bit because it's kind of late. I got caught up. I was out passing out flyers and door knocking, talking to people out in the neighborhood like I usually do. And I happened to run into a client that, buys and sells houses. I had to cancel. I was supposed to make this video with another Asian young lady. And she took it a little personal. I had to cancel on her, but you got to understand that business, like my job is helping people go from point A to point B when it comes to real estate, right? So say, for example, there's like a office meeting, and during that office meeting, I have an appointment. Like if a client calls me, hey, I'm thinking about selling this house. What do you think it's worth? I'm going to be there at this time. And if it happens to be when there's an office meeting, I'm probably going to skip on the office meeting, and I'm going to go meet up with the person because that's, in the end, that's how I work. That's what I do. If somebody wants to buy or sell a house, if they want to figure out something with a loan, if they can do something, if they can't do something, that's what I do. That's how I get paid. That's my favorite thing to do. That's what I'm good at. So I'm going to do this video now by myself without the other Asian. She got a little mad. It's all good. When you think of real estate, you've seen that video where they say, you're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy. Well, I am him. I'm that guy. If you say you have a thing come up and you're like, oh, I want to buy a house, but I don't have a job. You can't do that, right? That's what you're going to think. No. What you do is you grab your phone, go to your contacts, scroll down, find Tuesday, my real estate guy, because I am him, and you text me, can I buy a house without having a job? Yes, you can, because you talk to me. I'll tell you how it's done, how it's possible to do that. That client I'm going to help. The agent that I was supposed to do this video, because I'm doing these videos and marketing and talking to people and doing open houses, just so you can talk to people. If I have somebody that wants to sell their house, I need to talk to as many people as I can so that all those people know about that this house is for sale, so I can take care of my client. Or if I have a client that wants to buy a house, I need to talk to as many people as I can, so when somebody wants to sell a house, they tell me, hey, this house, they want to sell it, I can offer to my client. So but the end of it is walking people through the process, making it smoother, making it easier, holding the hands, offer solutions to problems, get over humps, over hurdles, right? It's helping the people reach your real estate goals, because when they buy a house, somebody goes and visits them and be like, oh yeah, here's my badass agent that helped me do this. Did you have any problems? We did have problems, but he took care of them because he knows what he's doing. So I am him. Grab your phone. When I say save my info as Tuesday, my real estate guy, question comes up. Can I buy a house without having a job? Any question. That's just the one that I came up with, which I do have the answer to, by the way. Open your phone. Get to your contacts, scroll down to Tuesday, TOOSDAE, my real estate guy, and text me your question, call me, whatever you got to do, Tuesday.com, TOOSDAE.com, right? And yes, I might piss off some vendors, I might piss off some people, but you're number one when you want to sell your house, you're number one when you want to buy a house, you're number one when you want to buy a piece of land. That's what I'm good at. And that's what I help people do now. And the reason I'm multitasking was because like I said, I was out door knocking, ran into a client that, buys and sells houses, and I am him. I'm his real estate guy. He grabs his phone and he says, whenever something comes up, he wants to buy a business to part heavy machinery. He knows that I am him, Tuesday, my real estate guy. So I happen to run into this guy and he's like, oh, I was going to contact you. I want to do this. I want to know, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but there's a transaction, there's something he wants to do. And I am him, Tuesday.com. So this time I'm going to eat a little bit. I got me a rotisserie chicken from whatever the store is with a bunch of people that I hate going to, that you need the Costco. It's from Costco. I got a chicken bake too. I have too many people for me, but everyone has a Costco card, so I got to get with the times. So I'm gonna be eating at the same time with and watching this video. This video has really good information. It's titled, "Is the U.S. Empire Coming to an End?" Let's go through it. I started watching it, thought it was some good info, and I thought everybody should know this info, and I'll stop it eventually or intermittently during the video and insert my comments in there or my thoughts. If you guys have any questions, or if I say something wrong, just go in the comments and ask me or tear me apart, whatever you got to do. Let's learn together. Don't forget Tuesday, my real estate guy. Save my info, because I am him. I'm that guy. Let's get started.
Chad Markowitz, a KE report, believes that we could see some serious implications as a result of BRICS nation affecting or devaluing the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Now, many believe that the United States has weaponized the dollar, and with different sanctions that we've imposed on countries like Russia, they are looking for ways to group together and lessen the power of the United States. This obviously would have major implications on our U.S. economy. I think you're going to enjoy what Chad has to say, and afterwards, I look forward to your comments. Chad, thanks so much for joining me to discuss your opinions on the collapse of the U.S. dollar. I know it's not a very sexy thing to talk about, and of course, there's been a lot of chatter, social media, YouTube, about the BRICS nation rising up, and I guess just the weaponization in general of the dollar. But just give the viewers a little foundation on why you think the U.S. dollar, what's been the king of the world's reserve currency, just why do you think that we are looking at a potential dollar collapse?
Yeah, it's been called King Dollar for a reason. It has been king, and I think a lot of that ties back to post-World War II, how Henry Kissinger basically lobbied a lot of the oil-producing nations, in particular Saudi Arabia, to use the petrodollar. And so if you wanted to trade oil, you got to trade the dollar. And I think the dollar was also seen as a reserve currency for the world for a reason. We had a strong economy. We still do have the world's strongest economy. But what's happening now is the current landscape. This has been a process, is that a lot of nations, if you look at something like China, what they're doing, if you look at some of the countries in the Middle East, if you look at the BRICS nations, you're starting to see countries that are looking at how can we become less dependent on this? How can we trade amongst each other with our own currencies?
All right, this is some high level stuff for when it comes to financial stuff. It's I guess real estate related, but more peripheral. But he said something called a petrodollar. Petrodollar is, how old is this video? Because there's some actual changes to this. This is 2 weeks old. This is a 2-week-old video. So they're talking about the petrodollar. The petrodollar is an agreement that our country, United States, made an agreement with Saudi Arabia. They have a lot of oil. They made an agreement with Saudi Arabia, with the crown family, the king, because they have a king over there, or the prince. This is the people that run it. It's not like over here we have presidents. Over there it's still the same. There's still a hierarchy. There's still some people that have more privileges than others. But the gist of it, the reason that the U.S. dollar is so powerful is they agreed to sell their oil in dollars. So this creates a demand for the dollar. And just recently, Saudi Arabia has dropped that, and they will now start accepting currency from other places. This means that the dollar is, it's one of the steps towards collapse. Dollar is still very powerful simply because of how liquid it is. There's no other, take for example, somebody bought a bunch of oil from, I believe Russia. Russia bought something from India, large amounts, and they ended up with a bunch of rupees. Rupee is the currency in India. And Russia now is sitting on, I don't know how many millions of rupees, and they can't contact, the U.S. and be like, hey, I want to buy a bunch of stuff with rupees because we don't care about rupees. We don't take rupees. You can contact Germany. They don't want rupees. Africa, the whole continent of Africa, Nigeria, South Africa, whatever place in Africa, most of them, they don't want rupees. Egypt, get out of here. They don't want rupees, right? So, but the dollar, you can go to Guatemala, you can go to Egypt, you can go to China, and you can find ways to use a dollar. It's widely accepted. This is why the dollar is so important. This is why the dollar is. There's a lot of debt around the world in dollars. Even China themselves loan dollars out to people because they can't loan out the Japanese yen, Chinese yuan. Yuan is the Chinese currency. You can't, because nobody wants Chinese yuan anywhere in the world. You can't do anything with it. You can take dollars everywhere. This is the reason that the dollar is so powerful. Even Russia's having issues right now because the banks can't use, because of the sanctions, they can't use dollars, and so they're having issues right now as we speak. But the latest, and which is not good for the dollar, is that Saudi Arabia is now, I believe it's just, what's today, the 13th? This might have happened like a few days ago, where they're talking about now accepting different currencies from different places. So that's a hit to the dollar, but there's still a lot of other things that keep the power of the dollar up. And it doesn't look good, but it's not going to happen overnight. It will happen over a little bit of time. For example, if you buy, like a bar of gold right now, a little 1 ounce bar of gold, it's going to cost you like $2,300, I believe, is an ounce of gold. But if you go back 10 years, maybe it was $200. The value of the gold didn't change. It's the money that's losing its power, and it loses its power because there's more of it out there that's just being created without actually building something, creating something of value to trade for that currency, right? We just print money and give it out to people. So if I have $10, person next to me doesn't have $10, right? My $10 is very special because I'm the only person with those $10, but here comes the government and gives them $10. Now we both have $10. These $10 aren't as special anymore because more people have the $10, right? But you can't do that with gold. Gold, you can't just print gold. If you printed gold, then right away gold would lose its value because now you can just print gold. But gold is, something that's there that gets mined. It costs a lot of money to mine it. There's a limited supply. So that's why if I have gold and this person next to me doesn't have gold, the government can't just print them gold. They can print money and give it to them, and then they can go buy the gold with it, and then they have gold, but that gold is a real thing of value. So this was, how do we get, the petrodollar. It's called the petrodollar because Saudi Arabia agreed to sell their oil, not in their currency, which is dinars, I think is what the currency that they use. Whatever, it might not be dinars. I forget what it is. But if I think about it, I'll say it. Also, I think the agreement was that the U.S., because we've been a military power for a long time, that we would help them stay in power, and in exchange, they would only sell their oil for protection from the U.S. because we got like the strongest military. For protection, the agreement was they have to use the dollar, and that kept the power of the dollar for a long time. And just now that changed. This has been, I believe, around the 80s or the 70s. It's been like that for a while. And yeah, that's what the petrodollar is. I might have, I need to explain it clearer. Just let me know. Let's get back to the video.
How can we use assets like gold and oil and other hard commodities to trade amongst each other and bypass the petrodollar? And they're openly doing that. And then when you have all these meetings of these BRICS nations discussing potentially coming up with a new currency, I think that's messy because it's hard for them to get along as a big cohesive group. But de-dollarization is a thing that's been going on for really some time in other nations. For us, it sounds like heresy, but I think what that is going to mean is that there will still be a dollar and we will still use it. It'll still be a strong global currency, but it's going to be falling in value. And it's going to be dropping in value just on a technical basis, but also on a fundamental basis in the U.S. as well. And so I think that the dollar collapsing in...
Well, that's funny. It's just kind of echoing what I said. I mean, I might have learned it from this guy. I don't know where, but it's just something that I know. So there's a bunch of things that make the dollar powerful. And what he's saying is that this isn't the collapse of the dollar, but it is technically, it's a negative for the dollar. So it's going to affect the dollar a little bit. Doesn't mean that it's going to completely collapse. But if we were going to collapse, that would be one of the dominoes out of the however many dominoes need to collapse for the U.S. dollar's currency value to collapse. All right, let's get back to it.
In value, if it just went from where it is now over 100 down into the 80s or 70s, what would that mean for the price of goods? What would that mean for inflation? What would that mean for global trade? And so I think there's a lot of considerations here.
What does it mean when I hear they say weaponization of the dollar? What is that by definition?
Well, I think you're using it like a bludgeoning stick against other nations. Look at what we did with Russia when the Ukraine war started. We immediately went after the SWIFT banking system, which is how banks transfer money amongst each other, and said, you're kicked off at Russia. You can't use the SWIFT banking system anymore. If you're another country looking at that, if you're China, if you're our Saudi Arabia, if you're looking at us as a big trading partner, and you think, wow, you could just kick me out of your banking system collective, maybe I need to start making a plan B. And I think that when other nations saw that, that was a big, I think that's going to go down as a seminal moment for weaponizing the US dollar against a nation, because if anybody gets off sides with us, that's the same risk they have. And so I think that is a key consideration for why the BRICS nations accelerated the plan. And I think other nations are just thinking, hey, just in case, let's start making some alliances out.
This weaponization of the dollar. Well, I'm hungry. This is my first meal of the day, and it's like, holy shit, almost midnight. Damn, okay. Oh, I lost track of time. But what he's talking about, the weaponization of the dollar. For example, it happens all over the place. There's a reason that they don't trust Chinese money. There's a reason they don't trust other currencies, right? Because, for example, in China, when there was some protests starting, the Chinese government went into people's wallets and they froze any wallets that were trying to pay for any kind of public transportation that was going towards where the protests were. They basically just froze people's money. Over there in Canada, when they were forcing everybody to get the vaccine, right? There was truckers that refused to get the vaccine, and they started protesting and blocking freeways, saying that if we're gonna make us get this vaccine, then we're not gonna work. Forget this. The government went and blocked people's accounts, so they couldn't like the truckers were stuck. They couldn't buy gas, diesel for their trucks. They couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't buy food. Have you tried to go to like downtown or something in LA? Try to use a bathroom, they're not going to let you use the bathroom unless you're a paying customer or you go to one of those bathrooms that you pay, right? So they just block their money, right? Completely. They can't drive they run out of diesel. You can't buy any because you don't have any money. So I'm just saying they weaponize the dollar or whatever currency it is. That's how they weaponize it. They hurt you with it. Here in the U.S., let's see what can I think of? When people in the military, they pretty much got rid of everybody that wants to think for themselves. If anybody in the military did some research and they saw, some negative things with the vaccine, then they say they decided that they didn't want to get the vaccine. If I wasn't in the military, but if I was in the military and I didn't want to get the vaccine, they would have kicked me out. So everybody that's in the military, it's just people that are just going to do what they're told. And, which is, there's no issue because the military has always experimented on people with all kinds of vaccines. This one was a little bit different, because it's a different technology. I don't want to get into the details. It's all political and stuff. But I get it why people didn't want to get vaccinated. If you want to get vaccinated, didn't want to get vaccinated, it doesn't, people should have their own choice, right? But they weaponized it in a way that you're in the military. It's a career. You get a paycheck from it. When you retire, you can buy a house with zero down. You can go to school and not pay for any of the schooling. It's all covered. You're saying they weaponized the dollar by just cutting off your paycheck. They were talking about if you're not vaccinated, you weren't allowed to go to like restaurants in LA, so you had to stay home. That kind of stuff, right? So if you're not allowed to go to restaurants, you're not allowed. They're weaponizing that. You're not going to do what we tell you. Then you can't go to Chipotle. Stay home. I think they were even talking about rounding people. They were demonizing people that didn't want to get the vaccine, right? So it was just like this separation of people. Like they weaponize these things just for control. So that's what they're talking about, weaponizing the dollar. If the U.S. weaponizes the dollar by putting sanctions on people, like saying, no, they freeze the accounts that have the dollars in them, and these countries can't make these big transactions. Other countries are going to see, so if we don't do what the government tells us, if we don't let them control us, then they're going to freeze our accounts. That's what they mean by weaponizing the dollar. Get back to it.
Outside of this U.S. dollar situation,
I think Russia, from what I've read on BRICS, they seem to be sort of spearheading it. I know that they have an annual conference, and it's in Russia this year. And I know that there has been talk about a currency, BRICS currency, to reduce the dependency on these country members, to reduce the dependency on the dollar, just like you said. I just want to kind of lay some foundation for people, because a lot of the audience a lot of people in general are confused as to how dollars are produced. We print them. I know when you look at deficit spending that's happening right now, the debt climbing $35 trillion or however much $1 trillion, whatever it is, it's an absurd number. And yet we're trying to get our house in order. Our own house in order as consumer debt is out of control. And it's kind of like, well, if you look at the government and their printing and it's not technically printing anymore, the printing presses can't possibly print enough money. It's all digital now. You push a click of a mouse or a keyboard entry. Nixon back in 1971 was an important part of sort of taking away the gold standard, or eliminating what's called the Bretton Woods system. Can you kind of give some history or some foundation of why we eliminated the backing of the paper currency, the fiat currency, eliminated backing it by gold, and so did basically the rest of the world as well, has eliminated any kind of backing on the fiat or paper currency. Some people say, so what? Our politicians said, so what? I mean, it's no big deal. We don't need it. But what is the significance of not having a gold-backed monetary system?
Yeah, great question. And I think that ties into what the central banks want more than anything, which is to be able to print or at the click of a mouse, create as much money as they want. When you have a gold-backed monetary system, you have what's called honest money or hard money, and you have something that's backed with tangible good. And a lot of people today view gold through this bizarro lens in the West of it being a cat rock or a barbarous relic, as it was called. It actually was sound money for a very long period of time, as was silver. But at the time that Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, they unpegged the dollar because France was calling our bluff. They're like, okay, well, let's go ahead. If you can cash in dollars for gold, we'll go ahead and take all the gold out of Fort Knoxton. And everybody realized, whoa, let's hit the brakes here. We don't want them to have a call on all the gold. We'll just unpeg it. But what it really does is it gives you the ability with fiat to create as much of it as you want, to paper over any problems you have. If you want to bail out some banks, if you want to bail out some companies like we saw in the great financial crisis, it's a lot easier when it's not backed by gold. Now, I don't know that we'll ever return to a gold standard, but what it also allows us to do, and all nations to do, is basically inflate your way out of problems. And that's what central banks love to do. And that's what governments like to do with fiscal spending. And so what it basically allows you to do is to devalue your currencies. All fiat currencies are in agreement now. They're
Just a little background. When they mean backed by gold, before we had paper money, what we use, it was gold. Gold was, there's always been some kind of currency. Some people use seashells, pearls. There's been a bunch of different things, but it's got to be something that's perceived as valuable by a lot of people. And gold, silver, copper, these are things that have been considered valuable by a wide variety of people. So that's why it was currency. For example, the Romans had gold coins, and with the gold coins, it's just, you just have gold and a gold coin that was worth one, whatever they called the Roman, maybe that's the dinar, whatever it is, that's what it was. But then when you wanted to buy something and a piece of gold is worth, so much money, but the thing you want to buy is only worth that, they didn't want to maybe cut the gold in half or, weigh it and cut it so that it, it's not that easy. So that's where we came up with the dollar, something that's like an easy way to break down the value of, so say you got a gold coin that's worth, $100 and what you're buying is only $2. You're not going to clip a little $2 piece and then the next thing you're going to buy is $5. So now you got to find a $3 piece and a $2 piece and put it together. It's very inconvenient. So we came up with this agreement where the dollar was worth $1 of gold. So whatever $1 of gold gets you, that's what the dollar. So you could just go. It used to be called the dollar used to be called like a gold certificate. So you could just go to the bank and be like, I want my dollar worth of gold. I want my $10 worth of gold, and they would literally trade you that money for whatever the the gold is. So there's a limited amount of the gold, and we borrowed money from other countries, and like here from France, they had a bunch of dollars, and they wanted to keep taking out the gold, and we don't want the gold, the actual valuable stuff, to leave another concept called Gresham's law, which the lesser or the better, the more valuable currency replaces the lesser valuable currency. So the U.S. wants to keep all the gold that actually has value, but only have the dollars out in circulation that, they don't really have value. We have more of an agreement that it has value. So when France started taking out, it was at a point that they're like, okay, so we can just take out gold, and they just started taking out their gold, and the U.S. is like, well, if they keep taking out the gold, they're going to deplete us. So then they separated the gold from the dollar, so you could no longer take your dollar and exchange it for gold. That agreement, that's when we went into the I think it's called something reserve system, where now you put $10 in the bank, or you go to the bank and you want to loan $10. They give you a loan for $10. You put that in your account, and in your account you now show that you have $10, but they only have to keep a certain amount of whatever money you put in the bank. So they'll loan out $9 of the 10 that you put in that you just borrowed. So it kind of creates money, which, with the gold, you can't really create more gold. But with the dollar, right, I'm the bank, you borrow $10 from me, I don't need to give you $10, anything worth $10. I just go on the computer and or give you a check or whatever you got to do. You go put it in your bank. Your bank has the I think it's called fractional reserve system, which is what we in general have here, or all around the world. And you borrow those $10 from me. It could be you put it back into my account, your checking account that you have at me at this bank, or at whatever bank you want, right? They only have to keep a fraction of it, which is maybe one out of the $10, and they loan out the other $9, and that's how somebody else puts the $9 in their account. They loan out $8 of those dollars, and they put those $8 in their account. They only have to keep one of those $8, and they loan out $7. So you can tell how those initial $10 that you borrowed turn into like $100, and that's the little bubble that we're working with. You can't inflate gold like that, but you can inflate the dollars just simply because you can hit print or put numbers in a computer, just add a zero, and now there's more of it. And that's why the dollar loses its value, because you create more of it out of thin air. Gold, you can't just create more out of it out there. It costs a lot of money to get it out of the ground. So if there's $10 worth of gold, that's just $10 worth of gold. $10, they give you a loan for $10. You put that in your account. If you have $10, you can turn those $10 into $100 into $1,000. Fractional reserve banking, I believe, is what it's called. Get back to it. I lost my train of thought.
Agreement that there's a value to this, because there are pieces of paper with a dead president on it. There's no value to the paper. It's just something that we agree has value as a trading mechanism. But when there's nothing backing it, and the BRICS nations are actually talking about backing their currency with commodities, maybe a mix of commodities, maybe gold. I don't know that we'll ever go back to a gold standard, but what it really basically did is it allowed governments in the world and central banks to print as much currency as they want, which is why we've seen all fiat currencies dropping in value in their purchasing ability. And it's not, people look at the dollar and say, oh, it's still a dollar. Okay, but your dollar is buying less today. How much more today is gas than it was 10, 20 years ago? How much more is milk and groceries and eggs than they were? That is because your fiat currency is dropping. So why it matters to people in their everyday life is everything is going up in prices. You've got inflation going up because you've got fiat going down. And when you've got fiat going down globally, they're measured against each other, it doesn't look so bad. But when you look at what you can actually purchase with those dollars, that's why this is so significant.
Well, when sort of along with what you're saying, when Nixon took us off the gold standard, wasn't it one of the primary reasons? Wasn't it because of inflation?
Exactly, but they realized that they can regulate it, throttle it up and throttle it down using central banks easier. But it's really also because the people were calling their bluff. They were saying, hey, if your dollar is the greenback, if it's backed by gold, we'll take the gold instead of your dollars for trade. And it was really France that was pushing the envelope the most. But then other nations said, hey, good idea, France. Let's go ahead and cash in our dollars for gold. That's something they absolutely didn't want. And so when they unpegged it, I think they have it gold at $35. Well, as we talked about in our live show on Tuesday night a couple weeks back, look what happened to gold since then. It went from $35 to several $100s to hundreds of dollars to $1,000 to now $2,300. Well, what does that say about what your dollar's worth? If that dollar would buy if that dollar to gold was $35, now it's $2,300 to a dollar. What does that say about how far your dollar has fallen since 1971?
Why not just print enough dollars to eliminate the deficit?
That is the source of inflation. People debate all the time, where's inflation coming from? It's not because of supply deficits. That's an accelerant on consumer prices. It's not because of trade imbalances. The source of inflation is always the creation of more money supply. And look at our deficit right now. We're at the point with these higher interest rates. Now that the Fed has cranked up the tightening process over the last couple of years, we've got all this government debt. Every year it seems like we have 2 or 3 debt ceiling debates and it's political theater. Are we going to raise it or not? Every time they raise it. It's like a kid with a credit card that keeps jumping up the balance higher and higher and higher until they can't afford it anymore. So now we're a nation that can't afford the debt. We're drowning in debt. And our way to get out of it is to try to inflate our way out of it. The only other option is deflation and a deflationary spiral, which they absolutely are panicked about. That's probably on the board as well. But if you try to inflate your way out and just create as much dollars, other nations say, well, then I don't want to trade in your dollars. You're not going to be the world's reserve currency if you do that. And so that is the source of inflation. And there's no way we can pay back the debt. So it's to the point now where we're really at a tipping point. Do we have some kind of a debt jubilee? Do we have some kind of a thing where we try to all as nations forgive it? Because every other nation did the exact same thing we did. They're also inflating their way out of the problem. The Eurozone's doing the same thing. Look at Japan, the mess they've been for 2 decades. Look at what China's doing right now. They're trying to print their way out of the real estate bubble they created over there, and they're trying to paper over the fact that they've got a real estate crisis. Every time you do that, you're driving the value down. It's a race to the bottom. All of the currencies are dropping at the same time because we're all using the same playbook. So if we actually try to pay off our debt now, it would be suicide.
Well, when we talk about inflation and the amount of debt and continued deficit spending, wouldn't one think that the best hedge would be to invest in physical assets like real estate, where if inflation takes place, the price of the real estate increases?
Absolutely. Hard assets, real things, tangible things. In a country and really a marketplace that's obsessed with digital items, service companies.
Had a conversation on ASMR. All right. Had a conversation with a guy of means. This gentleman runs a business, several businesses actually. Money guy. He explained currency is something that's moving. So, but it's not really anything. I think what is it called? Store of value. Something of store of value is where you want to keep something because you know it's gonna keep its value. It's safe. So that's why you buy, like this guy said, hard assets. Stuff of real value like gold, real estate. Let's just give a good example. A house that today 2024, a house that might cost you $500,000 in 2010, that house might have been $150,000, right? So it took you $150,000 in 2010 to buy something that now costs you something like $500,000. So that's what 4 times more. But a bar of gold, maybe right now is, say it's, what is it, like a little ounce of gold is $2,300. So that house costs $500,000. How many times does 2,300 go into 500,000? I'm guessing it's like 30 times, probably around 30 times. So you would need 30 ounces of gold here. Let's do the right math just to make sure. So if I take a $500,000 house and I divide it by 2,300, okay, so 21,000 ounces of gold would buy you a $500,000 house right now, right? But in 2010, when that house was 150,000. Let's see, 150,000 divided by, well, back then gold was probably cheaper. Let's see, what's spot price gold 2010. So in June, price fluctuating gold through the year receiving. So between 12 and, so let's go with 1,300. So back then when the house was, say, 150,000, you would need, if it was 1,300, you would need divided by 1,300, 115, 500. So 500,000 divided by 2,300, which is how much gold is right now. You need 217 ounces of gold to buy a house. That's 500,000 right now. Now in 2010, a house that's 150,000 divided by 1,300, 115 ounces of gold. So 115 ounces of gold, and now you need 200 ounces of gold. So that's double. So then in 2010, you would have needed 100 ounces of gold to buy the house, and now you need 200 ounces of gold. So that's double. This isn't the best example, but just so you can see how stuff keeps its value. If you were using dollars back then, right now you would need 4 times as many dollars to buy that. So you see how gold and real estate hold its value, because back then you would have needed 100 ounces of gold to buy that $500,000 asset, which was worth 150, and gold was worth 1,300. So, right, fast forward to now, $500,000 house, you need 200, right? So you need double the gold to buy that house. Now, to be fair to gold hasn't moved up in a while, so it might need to catch up a little bit. Maybe in 6 months, in a year, gold is going to be more valuable, and it'll only take the 100 ounces of gold. But you see how it fluctuates. But with the dollar's not going to gain any value. So it took you 150,000 to buy this house in 2010, and now it's taking you $500,000 to buy the same house that was only 150 back then. So I think that's a decently good explanation. That's what currency, dollars. You get them and you put them into stuff that's valuable. Put them into a business, hard assets. You got gold, you got real estate, you got stocks, you got, whatever you got to do. That's the whole point of that. It's currency because you get it and it moves. You don't expect it to hold your value. If you have $100,000 right now and you put it into a savings account, and in 10 years you still have $100,000, you will not be able to buy the same thing. So that means that the that you're actually losing value, even though it's still $100,000 in 10 years. You just can't buy the same things that you can't buy with it now. Take for example, I remember when I used to be able to get a 20-ounce Coca-Cola, and that was, I think, if I remember correctly, it was like 99 cents. I don't think you can get that for less than $3 now. So same thing with the bag of chips. Remember the hot Cheetos? They used to be 99 cents. That same bag right now is like 3 something. I think it might be 4 something. So the dollar, that's why it's currency. You get it, and it's got to be moving. You got to put it into something of value. Don't expect for it to hold its value. If right now you need $100,000 to live, and you put $100,000 in, if you wanna retire, you put $100,000 for, you say you're gonna live for 20 years. So you put $2 million, which is $100,000 for 20 years. If that's what it takes for you right now to live, in 10 years, you're going to need to live on like whatever cost you $50,000 now, because that's going to lose probably half its value. So let's get back to the video. It's getting off on, hey, Tuesday.com for real estate. TOOSDAE.com. Let's get back to the video.
And advertising companies and AI and digital. It's really hard assets you want to be in the time. Look what just happened in 2022 when we had the Ukraine war start. What shot up crazy as anything? Oil. Oil is a hard asset. Energy is a great place to beat inflation, because guess what goes up every time there's inflation? The cost of gas, the cost of oil, the cost of energy. So real estate, energy, gold, silver, hard assets, land, farmland, agricultural land, water rights, anything that's tangible and real is going to retain its value in an inflation environment. So if you can get your hands on real assets, that's the way to weather the storm.
What about the fact that we may see a massive real estate price correction?
Yeah, so it's a mixed bag here in that you can see real estate prices come down hard, and I think that they probably will, because of the effect of higher interest rates, the higher for longer rates, the fact that it's drying up new home buyers. New home buyers can't afford to get into the market. It's stretched, so prices have already stretched so far from the go-go years now that they're going to have to correct. But on the long haul, you'll still, over time, do well in real estate, and it may change. Farmland's a little bit different than buying multifamily units downtown, and that's different than buying a residential unit. So different kinds of real estate, as you well know. But I think things like land and using it for farming and something that can be done with land, or some kind of a use for the land that inflates up with everything else, that's a great use for it. I still think commodities are a great place to be, and even things like having access to water rights. Wealthy people, what are they doing? What are billionaires doing? They're buying up water, they're buying up farmland, they're buying up commodities, they're buying up whole blocks of real estate. So that's what the wealthy are doing, because they see the writing on the wall.
I want to give some definition to the BRICS for those that may not know, and I pulled this off of Wikipedia. Come down a couple paragraphs. It says, combined, the BRICS members encompass about 30% of the world's land surface, 45% of the global population. Brazil, Russia, India, and China are among the world's 10 largest countries by population, area, and gross domestic product nominal, and by purchasing power parity. It also says the term BRIC was originally developed in the context of foreign investment strategies. It was introduced in the 2001 publication, Building Better Global Economic BRICS, by then chairman of the Goldman Sachs Asset Management, Jim O'Neill. Goes on to say the foreign ministers of the initial 4 BRIC general states, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, met in New York City in September of 2006 at the margins of the general debate of the UN Assembly, beginning a series of high-level meetings. Is Wall Street involved in the BRICS?
Well, I'm sure there are aspects of Wall Street that are counting on this and playing into this. Goldman Sachs always shows up in these kind of things, but I think it was initially a way of trying to do a trading block, like they're saying here. Initially, how do we trade with these countries that are emerging with big populations? What it's turned into over the last 20 years plus is a group of nations that are looking at not trading with us. So it went from how do we capitalize on trading to these giant foreign developing emerging nations to, hey, why do these emerging nations want to trade with each other, not us? So it's creating new trade alliances, and you can see that they also added in a lot of new members just over the last year. I think that's also significant. And there's also other nations on the waiting list to join. So it's not just Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa as it was initially. There's now multiple countries saying, hey, count us into this mix as well. I think that's important to note.
Hola, me llamo Román. Desde que nací me he fracturado más de 20.
Yeah, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. It also says that there was a 2010 expansion, and then there was a new development bank in June of 2012. It says the BRICS nations pledged $75 billion to boost the lending power of the International Monetary Fund, known as the IMF. And then here, just like you said, in 2024, this year, there was an expansion developing from the August 2023 15th BRICS Summit. South Africa's president announced that 6 emerging market group countries, Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, had been invited to join the bloc. Now, full membership was scheduled to take effect in January this year. However, Argentina had withdrawn their application. But, and before, and just kind of to segue into that, I found this NASDAQ.com write-up in May 9th of 2024, and it covers why did the BRICS nations want to create a new currency. And I think this is one of the things, Shad, that is really starting to rumble through social media, like YouTube. As I said earlier, a lot of people, at least mainstream media, don't want to give a lot of credit to this potential of this BRICS currency for obvious reasons, right? But here, NASDAQ.com says the BRICS nations have a slew of reasons for wanting to set up a new currency. Recent global financial challenges and aggressive U.S. foreign policies have prompted the BRICS countries to explore the possibility they want to better serve their own economic interest while reducing global dependence on the U.S. dollar and the euro. It says, when will the BRICS currency be released? There's no definitive launch date as of yet, but the countries' leaders have discussed the possibility at length. During the 14th BRICS summit held in mid-2022, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the BRICS countries plan to issue a new global currency and are ready to work openly with all fair partners. And then last year, in the lead up to the 2023 BRICS summit in August, there was speculation that there would be an announcement that currency could be on the table, but it didn't happen at that meeting. What are your thoughts? I mean, do you think this is? Do you think it's going to happen?
Well, so this is interesting. We've been talking about this on our show at the KE Report for years now, and it was considered a tinfoil hat idea a couple of years ago. People scoffed at it and said, "Oh, that'll never happen." What happened in 2022 and 2023 at their meetings showed the world that it absolutely is happening. When you have giant countries like Russia and China and India saying, and I think India is maybe actually of all of them less interested in being part of it. They've actually said that, but most of the countries that there's a waiting list to join. Not only did they add 6 new countries, but there's about 20 countries on a waiting list to get into the BRICS. So when you see that kind of interest and they're openly stating that they want to come up with a new global reserve currency, it's going to be a process, not an event. They're not going to come out and say, "Ta-da, here it is. Everybody get your dollar and go into this new BRIC." Also, there's going to be issues of them. How are they going to weave these patchwork quilts of different nations together into a cohesive unit? I think there's going to be challenges. Look at how hard it is for Europe to act as a single entity. How are all these disparate nations going to be able to do the same thing? But it's happening. It's in process. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's something that's actually they're announcing to the world that they're doing. So we talk about it a lot on our show because we're a commodity show. And obviously, when that announcement came out, guess what spiked? Gold. Guess what spiked? Oil. A lot of things spiked when they came out with that announcement. Now, it ended up being a nothing burger at that meeting because they didn't announce the currency, but they've been pointing out over and over again that they are working towards that. So I think this is something that plays out over a decade or two, not in a year. But I think it's something that gradually erodes the confidence in the dollar. And everybody thought it was going to be China. They thought it was going to be the yuan. But China's saying we'd rather have a collective currency that represents all of these emerging nations and their power collectively together. You pointed out some of the stats there. Look how much landmass they have. Look how much population they have. Look how many resources they have. Look at what a huge trading bloc that is. And China's had the Silk Road Initiative for a long time, where they wanted to tie together a bunch of trading partners like they had in ancient times, the Silk Road, and create a modern day version of that. That is the BRICS. That's exactly what they're doing. So I think people should scoff less and consider it more. It's not imminent, but it's happening. And I think it's significant. And I think in the history books, hundreds of years now, this is going to go down as the moment where, like the fall of the Roman Empire, this is the fall of the U.S. Empire and the rise of a new empire. And it's not a one nation story; it's a multi nation story.
What do you think that the U.S. will do to slow this down? I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean,
Oh yeah, that Cycle of Nations of Empires by Peter Thiel. Is it Peter Thiel or is it? I think it is. Whatever it is. If to remind me, just put a comment or DM me, and so I can figure it out. And it's a really good video if you're into the economics and financial stuff. And it's not exactly having to do with real estate, but if the dollar collapses and the country stops being the world power that it is, like the world police that it is, the real estate is probably going to lose value as well. So there's a reason that U.S. real estate is so valuable. So it has a little bit to do with real estate, but this is on macro, way on the other side, that if it affects it, it's a whole domino effect, but a whole lot of other, that's why I interrupted the video, but let's get back to it.
There's something further down in the article. It says, how would the BRICS currency impact the economy? It says a potential shift toward a new BRICS currency could have significant implications for the North American economy and investors operating within it. Some of the most effective sectors and industries include oil and gas, which is critical, banking and finance, commodities, international trade, technology, tourism and travel, the foreign exchange market. I mean, what type of impact do you think we'd see? What would happen to Wall Street?
Yeah, I mean, I think that list there is very significant. The oil and gas, banking and financing, commodities. I mean, that's the world I live in every day. International trade. What could be more significant than that as far as how nations trade? Do nations start saying, "Hey, if you want to trade with us, you've got to use the BRIC currency"? It was fair game when the U.S. said, "Hey, if you want to trade oil, you got to use the petrodollar." Turnaround's fair play. Now they say, "Hey, if you want to trade with us, you got to use the BRICS dollar." What if they start that kind of a mindset? How would that affect global trade? It's huge. I mean, that's a big deal. Also, look at where most of the chips are made currently. They're made in Asia. Look at where most of the commodities are refined. They're in Asia, mostly in China, but you're also looking at countries like Korea, Vietnam, Cambodia that are also powerhouses of, and Taiwan's the chip capital. So when you start looking at how this could start affecting nations that are right there in that vicinity, they're going to want to be part of the BRICS nations too. They're going to want to trade, and that's going to change how you get electronics here, how you build cars here. People forget that these components are shipped from overseas. You may assemble the parts here, but a lot of these parts are sourced from overseas. If you've got to start playing with BRICS nations in their currency, that's a game changer, and I do think it absolutely spikes the punch bowl for commodities, and that's why we're so laser focused on it every day, because it's going to change the way all of the raw resources are traded on the global stage. I think that's very significant.
You had said that a lot of this is coming as a result of a backfire against the U.S. and because of our policies, because of European policies and sanctions. You mentioned what happened during the Ukraine war with Russia. What other types of policies and sanctions are or have happened that sort of I mean, this has been in the works for quite some time. I mean, we're talking about more than 20 years. The BRICS have been working on this. I mean, what other things have we? What have we done to piss these countries off?
Yeah, I mean, look, Iran's on the list. We've been sanctioning Iran for 2 decades, and maybe rightly so. But if you are the people living in Iran, you're like, hey, then fine, we'll trade with somebody else. We just did it to China very recently. The Biden administration just put sanctions on China. That's not making them too happy right now. And there's this whole tech battle going on with China, but they're also sanctioning goods. Okay, well then, if you're these countries and you continue, and we have military bases all over the planet, we're trying to be the world police, which is maybe a project too big. It's bankrupt every country that's ever tried it throughout human history. When you try to police the world, when you try to manage the whole world, you can't do it. And the United States has been doing that for decades now. And it's not just one administration or the other. It's been administration after administration. And so if we keep poking look how many proxy wars we started just since the 70s all the way forward. There's something like 30, 40 proxy wars that we're in over that time frame. All those countries are looking at this saying, we need a way to get out of the dollar as a reserve currency. But there's not an easy way to do it. Which other currency would you turn to right now? The euro? I don't think so. Would you turn to the yen? It's a basket case. Would you turn to the yuan? Not yet. So the BRICS nations' idea is like, we're not going to be able to do this just one country, but we could do it together. The strength in numbers idea. And there's been a history of a lot of these countries. Look at what we've done with Venezuela. There's so many countries that we have sanctioned or pressed our trade authority, pressed our, thrown our weight around. And some of them are sick of it. It's like a schoolyard bully. Eventually people gang up on the schoolyard bully. And I love America. I love the United States. But I just think it's a result of poor policy on foreign policy and trade policy. And this is the result you get. People want a alternative, and they're coming up with their own, and their actions of the last couple of years have only accelerated it.
What do you think some of the repercussions would be leading up to a dollar collapse?
Yeah, again, I don't know that it's going to just crash. Like some people come out there and it's a little hyperbolic and it makes for good headlines, like dollar crash, and it is crashing in value. But I don't think it's ever going to go away. Like we're still using the British pound. The British pound is still a world currency. We still have the Swiss franc. We still have all these currencies. We're still using the euro. The reality is we'll just become less important. I think our future looks a lot like Great Britain's of the past. Like we were the colonial superpower, and over time, still a powerful nation, still a nation of respect, still a huge economy. You can't take that away from the United States. But if your currency is not important on the global stage to the degree that it was before, right now we're the only game in town. If there's multiple games in town, it's dilution of the importance of the global currency. I think as more countries redeem dollars for hard assets and call this, right now we're giving out trade IOUs. Like, hey, we'll get you back. Eventually, people are saying, I'm going to cash that IOU in now. Go ahead and take your treasuries back. So I think it's going to affect the treasury and bond market in a big way. Go ahead and take your treasuries back. Go ahead and take your dollars back. We're going to go ahead and use a different currency as our carry currency, and we're going to go ahead and trade amongst each other. As those dollars get redeemed, as they come back home and repatriate, the dollars are going to drop. What it means is a lessening of the daily life for middle-income Americans because everything's going to cost more. What we're going to have is a much longer period of inflation. People have been making a big to-do about the recent inflation, and it's very significant what we've seen. Well, how about a decade or two of rising inflation? What if we see stickier inflation for a long period of time, and people's way of life for their children and grandchildren isn't like it was in the past? I don't think most people really believe that. I don't think most people believe that's going to happen. I think there's a ton of skepticism. But if we wait 10 years and 20 years and get back together, Todd, God help us, and say, okay, well, look at where it is now. We told you. That's not going to do anybody any favors. What people need to be doing now is planning ahead proactively for this process to unfold. It's not imminent, but it's a process that's happening, and it's going to keep happening. And there's ways to protect yourself. There's ways to, like we say, get into different various forms of hard assets to diversify your own asset base, knowing that this is coming. But I think for most people, it's going to be a rude way.
I want to bring it down to a little more of a micro view of this, because he's talking about, how did he put it? Let's see. Let's go back a little bit.
Just get back together, Todd. God help us, and say, okay, well, look, believe that period of time, and people's way of life for their children and grandchildren isn't like it was in the past. I don't think most people, inflation, people have been making a big to-do about the recent inflation, and it's very significant what we've seen. Well, how about a decade or two of rising inflation? What if...
Okay, so inflation is what is the reason why stuff costs more now. So I don't know if you guys remember when Chipotle came out, and I mean I remember everybody hating on it. They're like, "Oh, this is fake Mexican," and I mean it could be fake Mexican. It could have been ran by white people or Indians. I don't know, whoever the business people were running it at the time, and maybe there wasn't Mexicans in there, but it's rice and beans and meat, chicken, right, with salsas. There was a hot one and a mild one. I mean, it was whether it was Mexican or not, whether it was traditional or not. That's a good way to evolve Mexican food. It could have been a new kind of Mexican food, but it's very similar to what I'm used to. So I didn't have an issue with it because you could get. Man, I remember when Chipotle was a new thing. I remember paying let me see. You could get for like $8, I think. Maybe no, it might have been less. Really, maybe like $6 or $7. You would get a bowl, and most people didn't finish the bowl. Me, I mean, I can eat. I'm a big boy, so I can eat, right? So I would finish it, but I'd be stuffed, which is not, you could get a large Big Mac meal, right? I could knock down 2 Big Mac meals from McDonald's. So, but with the Chipotle, I mean, I couldn't have knocked down 2 bowls. Right now, I can go get a bowl, which is not going to cost you less than $10. You're probably going to pay a bowl's probably like $12 or $13, which is like double the price that it used to be. I could knock down 2 of those. When Chipotle was first thing, I couldn't knock down 2 of those. It was one, and I was stuffed, but I was satisfied with one, and it was maybe like less than $7 for that bowl. And I remember now I remember I ordered there was on Uber Eats not too long ago. There was an offer, buy one get one free for the burritos, and I'm like, oh man, 2 burritos? Shoot. I ordered the 2 burritos. When they got to me, I was gonna share. Well, I did share the burritos, but it was embarrassing because they were just some normal looking burritos. It was just like some little. I could have knocked down 4 of these burritos. It was buy one get one, but that's what inflation is. That's why stuff is more expensive, because the money just doesn't get you as much, simply because when people get paid more to run the business, it costs more. And when you have employees and you got to pay them more, the people that butcher the meats, their employees, they get paid more. There's insurances. There's people that have accidents, they get sued. That costs money. The gas when they deliver the food, the food to the Chipotle from the person person that's butchering the meat or wherever they're growing the rice from, wherever they're getting the beans from, it costs more money to pay the people to grow it, the water, their electricity to run these places. The electricity is a lot more expensive now than it was 10, 20 years ago. The gas, fuel to drive the truck, right, all of this. This all gets more expensive, and this is what makes the prices of stuff go up, and that's why everything gets more expensive as inflation goes on. Your dollar loses the value. So how I want to tie this in, just because it's the real estate thing. If you work for your money and you pay for your bills, you're never gonna reach a point if you spend all your money to where you're gonna live comfortable, right? You need to have a real estate, a house that's every month that you're paying, you're building a little bit of a nest egg, a little bit of a nest egg, a little bit of a nest egg. Because if you buy a house for $100,000 for 30 years, you only owe $100,000, and in 30 years, remember, $100,000 30 years ago is a lot more money than $100,000 now. So if you buy something now for $500,000, in 30 years, it's going to take you're locking in that $100,000, and you're giving yourself 30 years to pay it off. But in 30 years, that thing now it's worth the $100,000 that you bought for right now, or $500,000, whatever it costs. That thing is not going to be worth that. In 30 years, it's going to be worth more. What doesn't grow is how much you owe on it. So this is one way to create value so that you don't have to keep working. Because if you're say you're renting and your rent is $2,000, right? In 30 years, your rent is going to be $8,000. So you have to keep keeping up with what that is. If you buy a house for $500,000 and your payment is $3,000, yes, it's expensive to pay $3,000, but in 30 years, you're going to be paying $8,000 if you keep renting, or in 30 years, your payment's still going to be $3,000, and the house that you bought for $500,000 is probably worth $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million. That's one thing you got to do. If that's not something that you want to do, maybe, every time that if you get paid, you get $100, you get a paycheck for $100. Save $1 every paycheck, save $10, 10%, whatever you can. But remember, you're gonna reach a point where you're gonna be too tired to get up in the morning and go clock in. You're just gonna be over it, right? So you have to force yourself now to find a way to keep some of that value so you can cash it out later in life, which is whether it's through investing in stocks, it's a risky thing because you might get into a company. Remember, I think, was it like Kodak was a huge company 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and now Kodak is Kodak. GameStop was popping when I was younger. I used to line up like the night before to pick up like a new game or something, right? People aren't really doing that anymore. GameStop is not that guy, right? So you got to figure out a way, either buying real estate, buying a little bit of gold. What's cool about buying like a little bit of silver, you can't just go to the store. You could go to, a pawn shop and they'll give you pretty much close to what it's worth. But you can't go to the grocery store and just spend it. So you're kind of just forcing yourself to save. And an ounce of silver is maybe, I think it's right around $30 right now. In 10 years, it's probably going to be $300 or something, right? It's going to be worth more. But you can't just go and spend it. But if you get a paycheck for $300 and you save 10%, which is $30, it's going to be right there in the account. Very easy to move it from your savings to your checking. It's very easy. It's very liquid. And us as humans, we naturally want to take the path of least resistance. So if the money's just $30 just sitting there, it's very easy to go to Chipotle and buy, the 4 or 5 burritos that it takes to fill you up now. But so that's why you don't keep money in the dollars. You get it and you put it into something of value. It could be a business. Say you want to sell tacos, buy 1,000 tortillas, buy 30 pounds of meat, and buy the stuff to make the salsa, right? And say you get a check for $300, you spend those $300 in buying all that stuff. You do your magic, turn it into tacos or burritos, whatever you're gonna turn it to, and you sell it, right? Now you turn those $300 of stuff into $1,000 of stuff, right? Turn it into more. Take those $1,000 and buy a little bit of silver, or take those $1,000, buy more stuff to make tacos, and then turn those 1,000 into 3,000. Take those 3,000, flip it, whatever you gotta do. Nothing illegal. Well, do whatever you want, but I'm not encouraging you to do illegal stuff. I don't want you to go to jail. I want you to have down payment money, or I want you to have house upgrade money. Start with a 2-bedroom house. Sell tacos, 300, turn it into 1,000, turn it into 3,000, turn it into 9,000. Just, grow it to 100 grand, grow it to whatever you want. Once you have the money, it's kind of hard because you're going to want to buy some, you're going to want to buy some rims for your car, or you're just going to want to buy a fancy fancy your car. But if you buy a 2-bedroom house, sell a bunch of tacos, gather another $100,000, and then sell your house, money from the house, money that you made, those $100,000, put it together, put it towards a bigger house that you want in the better area, or the area that you want, or the bedrooms that you want, or shoot, say you want to buy a McDonald's or something, buy a little 2-bedroom house, pay it, sell a bunch of tacos, grow that money, keep on flipping it, and once you have whatever it costs to open a McDonald's, like $1 million, hit up McDonald's. Hey, I want to buy this. Sell your house, get your little nest egg, buy McDonald's, and sell billion burgers or whatever it is that they've sold to the world. Right? That's how you avoid being a victim to inflation.
We see stickier inflation for a long period of time, and people's way of life for their children and grandchildren isn't like it was in the past. I don't think most people really believe that. I don't think most people believe that's going to happen. I think there's a ton of skepticism. But if we wait 10 years, 20 years to get back together, God help us.
I am not a financial advisor. I am a real estate agent.
And say, okay, well, look at where it is now. We told you that's not going to do anybody any favors. What people need to be doing now is planning ahead proactively for this process to unfold. It's not imminent, but it's a process that's happening, and it's going to keep happening. And there's ways to protect yourself. There's ways to, like we say, get into different various forms of hard assets to diversify your own asset base, knowing that this is coming. But I think for most people, it's going to be a rude awakening. If you're complaining about how much it is at the grocery store or restaurant now, think about what it'll be like in a decade when the dollar's worth less and less.
Well, you say it's not eminent, but giving a description like that it's coming, I mean, it sounds pretty eminent to me. You can't, I mean, there's two options. One is to inflate this debt away. The other would be to, create more debt, which would just kick the can down the road. What do you think the biggest threat to the U.S. economy is right now?
Yeah, probably ourselves for those exact same reasons. I think the biggest threat to the U.S. economy is U.S. policymakers and the central bank. I think that, and what I mean by that is, look at the response we just saw to the COVID lockdown period, where we issued all kinds of funny money to people, helicopter money. I would almost say cargo plane money, because we were giving out stimmy checks, and people were using those checks. Some were using it to stay afloat if they lost their job, but a lot of people were using it to speculate. That's what drove the meme stock raise. That's what drove all the speculation in the markets. All that money went into speculation, and then the payment protection plan, the PPP. Look how much of that money was misused. Look at the fraud there. Well, they also set a precedent that we'll do it again. And so what will happen is whoever wins this election and future administrations, they're going to use the exact same playbook they always have. Let's give away more money. Let's spend more money. Let's bail out more companies. Let's bail out the airlines that are failing. Let's bail out the banks that are failing. Let's look at all the credit repo facilities that the Fed has created. Look at all of the that slush fund, that bank funding term protection program that they came up with to get rid of illiquid banks when there was a regional banking crisis. We're going to do more of that, and that's exactly what causes inflation. All those fiscal spending backed by monetary policy with the Fed, all of that, let's go ahead and print away our problems means a worse. It's a tax on everybody. It's what it is. It's a tax, and it's a silent force of inflation that everybody deals with in their daily life. And then they have the audacity to get on TV and say, we don't really understand where inflation's coming from. We think it's supply chain. We think it's global trade. It's like, you're the ones creating the inflation. The Fed is the one doing it, and so are the policymakers. And the answer is really austerity and to cut spending and to live within and to balance the budget. That's not going to happen in our lifetimes. What they're going to do is spend more, print more, and it's going to just accelerate the decline of the dollar in tandem with all these other countries saying, hey, I don't think I want as many dollars as we held in the past.
Well, I think it's someone who has dealt with the government for pretty much my entire career, regulations, being in the construction business and just going through the permitting process, going to Baltimore City or the county and seeing how agonizing it is to go to a counter and watch these people do their jobs. I'm not. Look, I mean, I know you get it in every workplace. You have complacency or laziness that's in the workplace. But one thing I notice about government workers is they're not scared of whether they lose their jobs or not. I mean, their jobs are pretty secure, no matter how.
Dealing with the government is tough. I've gone to the city for permitting and stuff like that. But just yesterday, I was at a association meeting with some pretty important people like Jim Penman, Lieutenant. I forgot his name. Some important people around town that we have to deal with. And just they want to put up a mural, and they have an artist in mind, and they got the money in the budget. Like, they have the artist that's going to do the work, and they have the money to pay the artist and to buy the material. Like, it seems like that's all you need. But no, something needs to be drawn up. It needs to be submitted. It needs to be approved. It's got to go back and forth. People have to agree on it, make sure there's no laws are broken. I mean, there's just so many steps, and there's literally, they named the artist that they wanted doing it. I threw a local artist that I know in the mix, just because, it's the kind of stuff that he's been doing. So I might have just messed it up and made this more complicated. But I'm just saying, they threw a name of an artist around. So they know what artist they want to do. They have the idea of what they want the artist to do, right? That's the artist's job. So they tell the idea to the artist, and the artist does this thing together. So what does the artist need? The place. They know the place, the material, you buy the material, and his fee. That's the money. They have, everything is there already. And I was like, I just told them straight up, okay, I don't know exactly exactly what all the processes are because I'm not in, I didn't choose a career in politics. I just kind of, I go to the city and to do investigations, due diligence, for buildings, for that kind of stuff. But it's for clients, for myself. It's just very specific things, right? I'm not trying to lobby anybody, or I'm not trying to, get laws changed like big companies, they get laws changed. So they have lawyers that they know the process and all that, right? And so I just told them straight up, like, okay, I don't know what the process is and what I would need to get approved. But I mean, if you guys just need somebody to like talk to the artist and hold the money so that the artist can do his job and I can give him the money, like just seems like I can get that done. I even know an artist. That's when I told my buddies, he's done work for a bunch of cities, huge projects. He's actually doing something for the local university as we speak. So, but I told him, like, I don't know exactly what the bureaucracy process is here, but I mean, if you guys have the account with the money, you guys have an artist in mind, I mean, put it in my hands. I can put it together. If I need to talk to somebody, I mean, if some politician is gonna, or somebody at the city is gonna say, stop me from moving forward, then that'll be a problem because I don't know how to get around it. But I'm sure I can talk to somebody and figure out how do we get past this point. But it seems pretty simple enough. You got the money, you got the artist, you got the idea, you got the place. The artist is providing the creative part of it, so it's not like you need to do anything with that. It's just the bureaucracy of having the red tape and all this stuff that you have to go through. I'm like, I don't know about that part. But again, I'm sitting in the room. I'm sitting in a room with people that are. I mean, there must have been. I might have counted at like 10 Rolexes in the room. You know what I mean? So there was some pretty important people in that room, and their discussion was about how they got the money, they got the artist, but they can't just make it happen. You can't just mix it together and like somebody's got to approve every step of the way, right? It's some complicated stuff, and it's really annoying.
Proficient they are at running their business, and this is growing. This government, employment is becoming bigger. We're the exact opposite of what was intended to have a small.
And real quick, I'm not a fan of the whole bureaucracy thing because it just makes everything more expensive. I can go to LA, was it Death Row? Skid Row, bunch of homeless people, right? I can go to McDonald's. I can buy $100 worth of cheeseburgers, which is, I don't know, they're probably like $2 a pop. So that's 50 cheeseburgers. I'll go give 25 people each 2 cheeseburgers, so that, that's not saying that's going to fill them up, but just as an example, right? I just fed 25 people and it cost me $100. Or I can sell a house, get a check for, I don't know, $5,000. The government keeps their, takes their 10%. So that's $1,000, right? I can pay it to the government. The government can send, I don't know, $100 to Los Angeles. And, with the bureaucracy and all the government workers and all the politicians that have to approve stuff, right? The $1,000 they took out of my paycheck gets dwindled down to $100 that gets sent to LA, and that's probably going to buy 1 cheeseburger for 1 person in LA. So if I can take my $100 and feed 25 people, or I can pay taxes $1,000 and probably feed 1 person in LA. That's just an example of how it works and why I'm not a big fan of it, and I don't think anyone is a fan of it.
All government, governing our body, the people. And this government is getting so big and so powerful with so much spending. They're the largest employer out there in the United States. And we don't really make anything. We don't do anything. I mean, we may manufacture things for the DoD, but I mean, we're buying our parts from, overseas. So do you think that's a threat to, you say, to ourselves? Is that what you mean?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the globalization movement and the just-in-time delivery caused us to outsource most of the manufacturing and also cheaper labor in other areas. So even international conglomerates that are based here build everything somewhere else. And so what's happened after decades of that is a dependence on this foreign network that may be turning their back on us. So we've almost in a way dug our own graves. And as you say, we don't make anything. All that deficit that we have is a result of too much spending, too much giveaways, too much bailing out, too much interference in the process. If we had a truly free market, the market would figure out what was the fair price. What's the fair price for labor? When you start saying, okay, we got to have a minimum wage now that's $15 or maybe $20, or if you're California, 25 or whatever, there's a point where you're interfering in the natural free market. And we've interfered so much at this point that we're dependent on a central bank that shouldn't exist. People forget the first 150 years of this country, we didn't have a central bank. We didn't need one. And most of the founding fathers would have cringed if they would have seen what we've done with the banking system, because it's basically a monster. There's a great book out that I recommend for people called The Creature from Jekyll Island. And it talks about where how this monster was created, the central bank. But this has happened in all countries. They're all using
The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's not the most entertaining read, but if you like if you want to know how money works, that's one of the pillars. That's one of the books that I recommend you reading, because there's very interesting information on there. It's about there's a conspiracy theory. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just saying this is what happened. A bunch of people died in the Titanic that would have been the other side of who actually won, and who actually won was people like I don't want to throw names out there, but maybe like JP Morgan Chase, which is our Chase Bank now, and JP Morgan Chase, whatever the other ones, Wells Fargo or something. All the people that were running these spots, I believe, I saw something about the Rothschilds in there, which is one of the very powerful last names. So they got together and they came up with this I believe it was the Bretton Woods, or the central banking, which is the central banking is the people that set lending rate between banks, I believe, and they also the fractional reserve system. This is the where they would get the right where I explained with the $10 and you put it in your bank, they can loan $9 of those dollars. That whole thing is where that started, and that's probably where the bubble started. That might be when the dollar actually not exponentially, but the losing of value of the dollar actually ramped up. I believe was when that started happening, because that's what created the inflation, because you're creating the dollars out of nowhere. I might be wrong. Fact check me on that, please. But I'm pretty sure that's what that book was about. I have read it a while back, but I'm pretty sure it is about this secret meeting that these different bankers, powerful bankers, got together, and that's where the central banking came from. And now it's, I believe, turned into the Fed. They call it the Fed. The name Federal Central Banking, whatever, which the name has Fed in it, but it has nothing to do with the Fed. It's a separate private, like, just company that has the Fed name in it, but it's really not a government company. It's a little sketchy, but it's our monetary financial policy stuff, so we should be aware of what it is. If you're planning on doing anything with money, if you, I don't know, if you want to run a business, if you want to borrow money for a project, whatever it is, if you should know about finances, and that's one of the books, Creature from Jekyll Island.
Central banks are all doing the same playbook, so it's not unique to the United States. The problem is, and we don't even have as much debt to GDP ratio as some other countries do. China's far worse, but it's a big enough problem for us as the leader of the world economy, as the number one nation of growth, that we don't make anything anymore. We have a manufacturing sector that's there. There's things we make, so I shouldn't say we don't make anything, but it's tiny in comparison to the way it used to be. And so there's the idea of onshoring and bringing things back, but I don't know that we'll get there. And every administration points finger at the next one and says, look how much money that last guy spent, or look how much money the last administration spent, and then they go and they spend more. Every single time. You can look at hockey stick charts that show how much money has been created over the last just couple decades, and from administration to administration, they always spend more. I remember Obama picking on the Bushes for how much they spent. I remember Bush picking on Clinton for how much he spent. I remember that when Trump came in, everybody has spent more money than the last administration. So it doesn't matter who wins. They're going to spend more money. They'll be backstopped by the central bank that then prints more money. And what that means is your fiat currency is going to drive down in value. And what that means is everyday goods cost more. And the only way to get around that is to have something that inflates at the same pace of it. Or the idea has been floated out there that there could be all these countries that say, let's do a debt jubilee. In ancient times, that's actually what they did. They would forgive the debts and say, let's just have a restart. And so a lot of the people think the WEF and the World Economic Forum, that they may be building towards this big debt jubilee, and it may involve digital currencies. Hey, if we switch everything over from fiat currencies to the new crypto world of digital currencies, only this is not going to be your friendly Bitcoin or Dogecoin or Ethereum. This is going to be central bank digital currencies. If they start doing that, they can start doing things like, okay, we're going to give you a stimulus on your digital currency, but you have to spend it by September, and if you don't, it goes to zero. If you say something that runs afoul of the government, we may just go ahead and turn off your digital currency. It creates a brave new world, one that I don't think we're going to like, and a lot of people are sleepwalking right into it.
You mentioned a debt jubilee. Do you think that would be possible, that they would do that with bonds?
I think it's a little different. I mean, obviously the treasuries are how countries raise money, and I think that there's some serious problems under the surface with the bond market. We had a 40-year bond bubble, and that bubble popped in 2020. That's when rates got down to the 0.4%, the lowest they'd ever been. Now we're at 4% plus rates, and I think that the rates, if you can think back to the 70s and 80s when they were in double digits, I don't think that that's that far out of the question again. Do people want to go back to that stagflationary environment where we have super high interest rates, high energy prices, possibly paired with unemployment ratcheting higher, and a job market that goes down the toilet? I don't think that's that far out of the realm of potential over the next couple of years if we look at what's coming. But I think the bond market is toast. I think that over time there'll be ups and downs, but I think the bonds are going to fall in value because, again, who's going to buy these bonds? Every time we have to put bonds up for auction, we're trying to pay for the swollen government you just talked about, where people feel that they have job security. Most of that GDP growth we've been seeing is from the government sector. Most of those jobs numbers that are kind of cooked a little bit are because of the government sector. And so that's only going to swell larger and larger. What you would need to do is come in with a scalpel or maybe a chainsaw and say, hey, let's cut out all this spending. Let's get rid of most of these government organizations. Who is going to do that on their watch? What politician is going to have the cojones to come in and say, okay, we're cutting? I mean, you know who just did is Argentina. And look at how amazing it was, how quickly they turned around their economy, how quickly they turned around their spending. But you have to have somebody that comes in that's that kind of off the cuff and just says, we're slicing, we're dicing, I don't care what anybody says, you elected us, here's what we're going to do. I don't see anybody in the United States pulling that off anytime soon.
You had said that we make some things. I said we don't make anything. And I tried to find some stats on what do we make and what percentage of what we use in our daily lives, what percentage of that is actually made domestically. It was almost impossible to find any information on this, as is anything that you want to look up, to challenge or research the truth. The latest data that I could find was in 2015. I mean, I didn't just do a brief search. Okay, I dove into it. I probably spent more than an hour of scouring through publications. What I could find was so skewed that it basically showed the percentage of money, like what we spent or what we spend annually on domestic manufactured products. I couldn't see the actual percentage of what, like if clothes, for instance, and we know that's a large percentage of imported, product, right? But it wouldn't say, like 10% of the clothes in the United States are manufactured in the United States. What it said was this amount of money was spent on clothing from domestic manufacturing. Well, of course, things cost more money here to manufacture, so that's not a very good metric. I'm trying to find out, like, what are the percentages we experienced through the shutdown, just how vulnerable we are to imported products from other countries. We saw our brands that we buy typically in the stores disappear, and all of a sudden these weird name products were on the shelves, and the shelves are very empty. I mean, I personally had my truck at the dealer for 4 months because I was missing a part. You couldn't drive it. This isn't an overnight fix. So I think as we're coming more and more into the reality that we are screwed when we don't play well with others.
Well, on the manufacturing front, think about cars. We do build cars here, but a lot of the components are shipped overseas. And we build them here, but they're not 100% made here. So to your point, during the lockdowns, look how many people couldn't buy a car because they couldn't get maybe just needed the navigation system or an electronic component in it. And so you couldn't build the whole car. We can build most of a car, but it won't run. Well, that doesn't help you. Same thing with boats. We build a lot of boats here. I used to actually, in a previous life, I was in an insurance business, and I called on a lot of companies, manufacturers. We do build certain things, medical supply parts, but a lot of the metals that were used were sourced from overseas. So if you can't trade overseas to get the metal, you can't make the scalpel. You can't make the medical procedure part. And I used to live in Tennessee, and by Tennessee there's Dalton, Georgia. They have a lot of carpeting, but some of that is sourced. Some of the raw materials are sourced. Like, even though they make the carpeting there, they're sourcing it from other places. North Carolina is a big hub for furniture. But some of the wood is shipped overseas that makes the furniture. So you can see how important it is to have a global supply chain. And there's very few things that we 100% make here. We assemble things here. It's kind of like a giant IKEA store. Like, we're making things here, but it's coming from somewhere else. And so even a lot of our trade partners in Europe or Mexico or Canada, we're still sourcing things from other places. We're not an island that can be dependent on its own. We need to have trading partners that the whole world does. We all have different things that help the other countries. But if the global trade environment is changing, are we going to be left at the table with our hand out saying, hey, we want some of those parts too? So that's the big push for chips. That's why there's an AI craze. Again, 90% of the chips historically have been made in Taiwan. Well, China takes over Taiwan. There goes all your chips. What are you going to do then? So you have to start onshoring and building more on-site manufacturing. And there's a big push. All these data centers, we're going to make that. I don't know that it's tangible. We're sure going to have a lot of data centers for AI. We've got a lot of service companies. We have survived on the Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazons. We've survived on tech businesses that are not really tangible. And again, Amazon's not going to be selling anything. They can't source it from somewhere else. So it's very complicated. It's a very nuanced situation. But I think it was really, the last couple of years have been eye-opening for a lot of businesses when they realize, hey, my just-in-time turned into, hey, maybe a 2-year wait. And then that changes your customer base, and that changes how we all shop and how we all live and affects your daily life. So I think these are big topics that are happening right now, and I think there's going to be huge changes that we live through just in the next decade.
Tech jobs are about to get decimated from AI, and I mean, you can see, we are a big tech hub, and a large amount of our jobs are from the tech industry, and we've seen tens of thousands of layoffs already this year alone, and last year we had tons of layoffs in tech as well. I think white-collar workers in general should be concerned that their jobs are being eliminated and consolidated and replaced by robotics and AI. Question for you. Would you consider yourself conspiratorial?
Not really. I don't like the word conspiracy theories, because I think it's too convenient to poke fun at somebody and say, and then dismiss the whole idea. I believe in coincidence theory. Isn't it a coincidence that the people that are involved in these banking things also are the ones that are pretending they don't know where inflation comes from? Isn't it a coincidence that our policymakers do these terrible foreign policy campaigns, and then they point the finger at the other people and say, look at these
Sounds like politicians.
countries are all problems. It's like, wait a minute, you're the one poking the hornet's nest. You're the one that created some of these problems, and then you immediately blame shift away. So I think it's a coincidence that these problems are always tied to some of these deep state actors. But I do think people take it a little far. I just think it's easy to dismiss something like the BRICS. And to say, it'll never happen. But then when it happens, those people never come back and say, hey, I guess you're right. I guess it did happen. I remember people saying a couple years ago that oil is going away. We're not going to be driving in front of combustion engines. Everything's going to be EVs. Here's the plan. And it didn't happen. It's not even close to happening the way that they said it would. But if you believe people in the 1990s and the early 2000s, we wouldn't even be driving cars today. There's so many projections people make, and they act like, hey, scientists back this up, and that's a fact. But the reality is, it's always a moving target. And so I think people should keep their minds open to what are the potential strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, the SWOT analysis. What is happening on the national stage? What's happening in my local community? What's happening in my business? How can I address this? And if something seems too far-fetched, okay, we research it, look into it. What's the probability of it happening? If it's a low probability, dismiss it. But some of these things are high probability. They're happening, and they're hiding in plain sight. And there's people going to conferences on jet airplanes in Switzerland every year talking about these ideas. It opens the journalism are covering it, but people think, oh, that's just a conspiracy. Well, go ahead and read the articles, read what they're saying. I watch some of the things, I'm just amazed. This is what we're discussing doing in the future. Cybersecurity, defense. We're going to have drones going in. It's not just you're going to lose your job because of AI, it's automation. Look at all the fast food jobs that demanded $15 an hour, and now they've been replaced with automated menus when you walk in. It's not AI, it's tech, but tech is replacing jobs because, and the policymakers, we got to get these people to salt french fries. They get paid $15 an hour. This is important. Well, they need a living wage. Well, now they're living without the wage because there's automation. So that's only going to escalate. And so that's also setting them up for exactly what they want: universal basic income, living off the government team, having an allowance like a child. And that's what they're setting it up for. If everybody's losing their jobs because of automation and AI, not everybody, but a lot of sectors do, there's more and more people that are now at the mercy of government handouts and government programs, which only swell those government programs from a safety net to a 50% of the people is now utilizing the safety net. And that's not a net anymore. That's a way of life. And now, guess what? More spending, more fiscal spending, which means more inflation. It is exactly what they want.
You had mentioned the book on Jekyll Island, and for those that haven't heard of the book or don't know what it's about this secret hunting trip, duck hunting trip that 6 individuals went to Jekyll Island for this duck hunting excursion. And it just so happened, this was in 1911, and it just so happened that 4 of the 6 of the people that were there were directly connected with J.P. Morgan. And
In that business.
yeah, right. So talk about, and today, I mean, what businesses, if we look back 100 years, there aren't a whole lot of businesses in their industry that still exist today. And, the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, or released, announced, or signed into, existence in 1913, 2 years after it was written by these 6 individuals. But Jamie Dimon is still prominent in the global space today with a company, J.P. Morgan Chase, that 4 of those members, of the 6 members, were members of J.P. Morgan Chase. So when you look at that, and I could be, maybe I'm wrong on my numbers or whatever, it was a while ago since I read the book, but my point is, and why I asked if you were conspiratorial, is because there's a lot of talk that there is some kind of an ultimate plan. And I just want to kind of get your opinion on that. You had mentioned the World Economic Forum, or WEF. You mentioned the United Nations. We've talked about the BRICS. But there's also BIS, who is said to be running all of the banks that are in existence globally. I don't know. I mean, this is all news. I'm a real estate broker, man. I'm just trying to figure this out like many of our listeners. But what do you think about that? Do you think it's possible that there is this ultimate plan?
This is what's his name? Some Sachs. I forget what his name is, but this guy, I think he's been doing real estate for like 50 years. So if he's still trying to figure it out, I'm still trying to figure it out too. This guy's probably getting ready to retire, and I'm been doing real estate probably for about a decade now. So I mean, it depends on how you look at it. Every day I'm still learning something new. That's why it's such an interesting job. But it's funny, if this guy after 50 years is saying that that he's still trying to figure it out, well, that's actually, that might be the sign of a good agent, an agent that's always just trying to figure it out. Because when you get somebody that knows it all, they really don't know it all. They might be good, but the problem is maybe you don't respect new ideas or learning new things from somebody that's, that knows it all. I do know a lot, and I've been called a know-it-all, but I'm always learning. Never forget to learn.
I think that it makes for enticing stories to say that there's one cabal that's going to rule the roost. I don't know that human beings are that organized, but there's definitely clubs. I look at it very practically. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so I want to be clear. I just look at it from an economic standpoint. Who is pulling the strength? The people with power. If you look back at the old steel magnates and oil magnates and automaker magnates of the past, they did the same thing. How can Carnegie, push his weight around here? How can Rockefeller push his weight around here? These banking entities and the Jamie Dimons of the world, they're the exact same thing. Hedge funds are doing the same thing. Power broker.
More recent example. California has new legislation. I don't know if it passed already or it's going to pass, but California only wants electric big rigs, like the big trucks, the 18-wheelers, the haulers that you see, the big trucks that you see. Right now they run on diesel, and I believe they're trying to make it illegal to use new diesel trucks. All the new ones have to be electric. Maybe it's just specific areas, but I don't have proof. I'm just going to put it out there. But the people in power, the ones that can buy these expensive electric trucks, would be like Amazon or Walmart. I think, what's another big company out there? CR England, I don't know, JB Hunt, whatever. I think JB Hunt might have been going out of business already. But the big companies, UPS, FedEx, right there, they're the ones with the big trucks. They have a lot of money. They can buy a brand new $200,000 electric truck. The mom and pop places, or I think they're called the small business people so Amazon has, I don't know, 1,000 trucks. You might have somebody that owns their own truck. That's one truck. You might have a company that has 5 trucks. You might have a company that has 10 trucks, right? They make a good living. But for them to replace, say you got one person with one truck, they're like, okay, you can no longer use your diesel. Your new truck has to be a brand new electric truck, because I don't think there's any used trucks. And I saw the Tesla pricing, and I think they have 2 trucks. One's like 150, and then the upgrade is like 200,000, right? People that have 1 truck, 2 trucks, even 5 trucks, they probably don't have $150,000 sitting around to upgrade to that new truck once the truck that they have runs out of steam, once it breaks down. And you can't buy a used diesel one because they don't want new diesel trucks out on the road. After so many miles, after so many, I forget, there's like a rule that you can no longer drive them in California. So all these trucks are going to have to be replaced with electric trucks, and all the electric trucks are just new trucks, $150,000 plus for these trucks. And I don't think they're going to get any cheaper, because that's the entry level was $150 through Tesla, or I don't know if they're manufacturing them already, but I saw some of the prices. So, but you got to understand, the people in power, like say you got Walmart with 1,000 trucks, they're going to lobby politicians to do this kind of stuff, to make the rules, so it makes it easier for them to stay in power, and it makes it harder for the people that are not in power trying to because you got a person that has one truck and they're ambitious. They're going to want 2 trucks and they want to go to 4 trucks. They want to keep growing their business so they can keep making more money. But the people in power are going to make rules so that the people that are trying to make it up don't make it up. They want to keep a moat around their business. So that's that was one. What was the other example? Amazon will say you have a t-shirt company, like a specific t-shirt company like this. Say you're that one company that makes the really comfortable V-necks. Amazon is going to make the same shirt and sell it for like $1 less. They might be losing money, whatever it is. They're going to sell those shirts and so they can cost me business and I can go out of business. Now they don't have competitions and then they can sell their shirts for $5 more. So it's a bigger company. This is what happens when you support the bigger corporations instead of the mom and pops. It's going to cost you a little bit more to support the mom and pops, but it comes back and bites you in the butt. So Amazon will make this shirt and sell it for $1 cheaper, even if they're losing money. But that's just so they can put me out of business. Once I'm out of the way, they don't have competition. They can jack up the price $5. They're going to make up all that money, right? There's Amazon specifically, Amazon, Google, Apple, all of these companies, they all have budgets of like $100 million a year, like some crazy budgets just for that. To go out, try out new ideas, see what businesses that they can take over just so they can make the revenue, right? It's a machine. They do this. This is what they do. Walmart, you can go to Walmart and you can see they got the you want Kool-Aid. There's that one Kool-Aid brand, right? Right next to it, you're gonna have a off-brand Walmart brand Kool-Aid, which will be very similar to that, but they'll sell it to you for 70 cents cheaper. So then you just buy that, and it's less that the other company sells. Eventually, that other company goes out of business, and they can sell their they have these companies, these billion-dollar companies. They have these huge millions and millions of dollars, $100 million budgets just so they could try new things. Amazon had a phone, and they put a bunch of money into like $100 million into this whole project, and nobody bought the phone. So they killed the project. But they make $1 billion, they'll take like 5% of that as like a throwaway money, 10% of that as like throwaway money, just because one of them will hit. Most of them are not going to hit, but the few that are going to hit, they're going to make a lot of money off of it. That keeps them in power, in moat, keeps them with political power. That's just how it works. That's why you support local businesses. So, all right, let's keep going with this.
Of course, banks are doing the same thing. A lot of these politicians and media people that are their mouthpieces and a lot of the big business people are in clubs. Is it that weird of an idea that these rich people get together and make plans for the future? Plans that they don't really care as much about you. They care about them. They care about their empires. They care about their legacy. It's not that crazy of an idea that these people meet in the Council on Foreign Relations and Trilateral Commission. These are real groups. Almost every president is picked from these groups. There's pictures of, you can go see them online, there's pictures of Reagan and Nixon sitting together before Reagan was even elected. There's pictures of these groups where there's politicians, media people, business people, banking people, all hanging out in these clubs. So I look at it as something that's gone on for all of human history. Powerful people and the elites always come up with plans that serve them. They don't help necessarily the masses. They manage the masses. I don't think that's any different now. Is it just one group that's trying to control everything with a big plan? I don't think it's that organized. But I do think that there's agendas. Remember that the WEF is an outgrowth of Agenda 2020 and Agenda 2030. People are like, well, are we not seeing big environmental? Because the whole point of the Agenda 2020 and Agenda 2030 was by those time periods, by 2020 and 2030, we'd have certain Green New Deal initiatives. Are those not being floated? Are we not seeing carbon taxes? Are we not seeing carbon credits as a business idea? Are we not seeing a push for EVs? Are we not seeing a push to put smart meters in all of your homes and manage how much electricity you're using, how much water? What if they start telling you, hey Todd, you can only have this much water this month, and if you use any more, you got a huge surcharge or you just can't have it? What if they start telling people listening to this call, this is your electricity quota, and you have to offset your carbon footprint because we believe in these climate change initiatives? Well, all of that is part of a plan. It's not just one person or one group, but there's definitely a plan. And so if you look at the World Economic Forum, some of the ideas they have is micro housing. Well, what are we seeing? We're seeing commercial real estate, like we talked about last time, turned into micro housing. Sometimes it doesn't end so pretty, but those are the initiatives. There's also going to be areas of the country where they tell you, hey, you just can't go there anymore because of the environment. We're protecting it. Well, when your smart car won't take you there anymore, when your internal combustion engine could, that's a form of control. So I look at it as there's a form of control that's being layered on society. And it's because there are narratives and initiatives that they then turn into policy. That policy then turns into the law, and that law then affects your daily life. And so from that sense, there's no conspiracy about it. It's very real. How does the world look now compared to how it did 20 years ago? Very different. If they just loaded the idea out that we can lock down a whole culture and a whole planet because of a viral outbreak, what's to say that they don't do that again because of a climate outbreak or because of another virus? What is the response going to be next time? And I was amazed at how quickly most people rolled over and said, hey, what are you going to do? So I think that from that standpoint, it's not a conspiracy. These are things that actually happen. And I think some people in these organizations believe they're managing the human population threat, the climate threat, the threat to business in a way that makes sense to them, but it's usually divorced of how it affects everyday people. And I'm fighting for the little guy. I'm fighting for everyday people to have better quality of life. And I'm also just looking at what ways can we protect ourselves financially and insulate ourselves from some of these changes so that we have better quality of life.
Yeah, we're going to control people so that we can have frogs, more frogs. I mean, it's crazy. Well, I mean, obviously, Shad, we could talk for hours and hours
Man, that's a good video. There's a lot of good information in that video. It's it kind of just touches a little bit on everything, but yeah, just that's what I'm here for. I'm here to, if you want to buy a house, if you want to learn about real estate, if you want to I'm here to make it easier for people to navigate this real estate world. And like I said, I don't know everything, but I'm really good at this. People have me saved in their phone as Tuesday, my real estate guy. This is I am him. I'm him. TOSDAE.com for real estate. Whenever you got a question, go on your contacts. Where's Tuesday, my real estate guy? Whatever question, if some economic thing, if it has to do with real estate, I've probably heard about it or am looking into it. It's on my list to look it up. So, but I need you guys. I need your help. I got people that want to buy houses, and I got people that want to sell a house. I'll give you one example. There's a guy in San Bernardino. It's by the university. The guy says he'll sell his house for $1 million. House isn't worth $1 million, but that's what he wants, and it's not against the law for someone to pay $1 million. I've seen deals go through where I didn't think it was worth that much money, but it was worth to the buyer. So there's specific things that need to come together. If I have a conversation with somebody and they're like, I have $1 million to buy a house, and I want a house in this area. Well, they don't have $1 million houses there, or they have a house in that area, but it's going to cost you $1 million. You never know what can happen. The thing is, this is why I talk to people, find out what they want, what they need, what the goals are, and see what energy we're working with, what, with the finances, who they got to talk to, connect them to the right people. If there's hurdles that we need to go over, I'm him. I'm that guy. Like that guy that says, you're not that guy, pal. You're not yet. No, I am him. TOOSDAE.com. See you on the next one.